Welcome to this week's edition of DotLife, Dorchester's hyperlocal source of news, commentary, and analysis in podcast format. I'm here today with Bill Forry, and we are actually in Bill's home residence. Well, not your home residence.
I feel like I live here. I mean, I kind of do. I can stay if I have to. They won't kick me out. I've noticed this.
You've tried to be evicted?
If they're kind of late, and they don't really care. No.
Well, you try to get away from us, and we knocked on your door. We're trying
they're in the newsroom where the listeners and viewers are in the newsroom of the Reporter, which is kind of empty except for us, which is a good sign because that means reporters are out on the beat doing the job, and they'll be back here to write their stories. But I think we're good for about 15, 20 minutes.
Well, if they come in, we'll just collar them into talking on the pod.
They'll be more interesting than me, for sure.
That can't be true.
But welcome back. It's good to have you. And we did a show earlier. I think the inaugural episode
with
was
you
done
and Linda. Yeah.
in the other room. So now you're in the. We moved it on up to the
next
big
one we'll do in the lobby.
In the elevator, maybe. We've
got a lot to talk about this week. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. It's been a busy week for the mayor, busy week for city government, and a lot of community meetings and the such. And well, let's get into it. Do you want to talk about the big meeting in Mattapan?
You want to start right out with the controversy, huh?
Well, I think let's just get it out of the way. The bus lane, people who aren't living along the Blue Hill Ave corridor may not know this, but it's been a big controversy between Mattapan Square to Grove Hall, really, over the last couple of years, and the discussion around a major public works project to essentially rip up the median strip in the middle of Blue Hill Avenue and put in dedicated bus lanes.
That doesn't sound controversial at all. I'm surprised.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you did that on Dorchester Ave, I bet you it would be controversial.
Yeah, I would think so.
But Blue Hill Avenue, people, as you probably know from riding along it, there's this huge concrete cement median strip, which has been there. I don't know.
There used to be trolleys, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting to. Is it used to be a streetcar route, so that these center running bus lanes, the proponents of this project say, "Hey, this is what used to be here. It got taken out, and that wasn't fair, and now we want to put them back in. It's an equity issue." Right. But there's a lot of people in Mattapan, Dorchester, other parts of the city who use that corridor every day who are like, no, we don't want you to do that. Yeah. So it is a controversial project. There was a big community meeting yesterday in Mattapan Square called by the Boston City Council. So 3 city councilors who are on the oversight committee used their powers to call this meeting and invite the community to come in and testify about what they like and don't like about the project and the process that's led to this. Now, just to back up a minute, Mayor Wu announced early last year, her support for this project, putting city dollars behind it. Yeah. But the project's origins really are at the federal level.
Blue Hill Ave is a federal street?
It's actually Blue Hill Avenue is a city-owned thoroughfare. Okay. But it is the money that originated this project, $15 million, comes from a grant that Ayanna Pressley, the congresswoman, secured. Okay. Steve Lynch, the congressman, also from Boston, helped secure this money through the federal transportation dollars to get the ball rolling.
During Biden administration or earlier? Okay.
It was actually during the Biden administration.
So this was a Pete Buttigieg project. Now I love it even more.
Okay. We know you're a big fan of Mayor Pete. Yes. So that's $15 million, but that's really just a small amount to get this thing going, design, and then get you a little bit of construction. The city has now said they're going to put in, I think it's $18 million of their own. Okay. And then the state through the MBTA, because this ultimately is like an MBTA project too, was going to put up another $11 million, but then they still need some more money, so they have to go back to the feds. That's where this is going to maybe hit a speed bump no matter what, because obviously there's a hostile administration who doesn't like giving Boston anything. Right. But the Wu administration has really moved the ball along in design. They're at 15% design now to take that median strip out, put in center running bus lanes with platforms at key intersections. So, people waiting for the bus have shelter. They're separated from the traffic. There's been designs that also show bike lanes.
Okay.
And that's also very controversial, as bike lanes are all over the city. It's not just the Blue Hill Ave corridor, let's be clear.
Can we back up for a second, though, Bill? Why is this project, what is the problem it's trying to address? Is it traffic? Is it pedestrian safety? Is it bus speeds? Is it all of those things?
It is all of those things, but I think it boils down to the bus.
Okay.
The idea of creating a faster, more efficient bus route for the people who are, transit dependent, public transit dependent in that part of the city. So this was an idea that got floated back in 2008, 2009 under the Deval-Patrick administration.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's
it was
going
called
back.
28X, and Russell Holmes, who's now the state rep in that part of the city and was a state rep shortly after that too, he's a big champion of this project. Russell Holmes and Mayor Wu together are the most vocal proponents of doing this project. But the idea is to get this 37,000 people, believe it or not, who use that corridor every day on the bus.
Wow.
That's pretty wild to me.
That is
wild. On one weekday, that many people, close to 40,000 Bostonians and people from surrounding communities going up and down Blue Hill Avenue to, whether it's to Forest Hills or to Nubian Square.
So 37,000 people are late for work every day?
Well, yeah. I mean, or they're stuck for 2 hours sometimes, right? Because they're on buses that aren't moving very well. And the platforms aren't, or the sidewalks aren't great. Russell Holmes, I interviewed him last Friday about this. He's very passionate about it. Yeah. It's basically like his legacy project, I would describe it as at this point. And he says his constituents are sick and tired of having subpar conditions, and 45, 50-minute, commutes into the city and back and forth. The fundamental thing they want to fix is the time. They think they can get this commute time down to like 25 minutes as opposed to 45 minutes.
And we've seen this on Columbus Ave in the city.
Yeah.
And is that technically JP?
Yeah, JP and Roxbury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has that been successful?
It depends on who you ask. There's people who hate it. Motorists tend not to like it because it's taken away a travel lane, and they feel it's more congested. But again, like Russell Holmes would say, and I think the mayor too, this is about the bus ridership. Right. This is about the people who are dependent on public transit. We want to serve them. They're not being necessarily heard at the kind of meetings that happened yesterday in Mattapan Square or even some of the other meetings over the last 2 years. The city of Boston's street chief, whose name is Yasha Franklin Hodge, says that they've done 3,000 engagements with individual people over the last year and a half, really, along the bus route, talking to people who ride the bus, talking to the T operators who drive the buses. And they claim that there's the real consensus that people do like this project. Yeah. But there's a vocal opposition, and they're real. They're people who are, who run the civic associations in Mattapan. The Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council just this week formally came out against the project, saying, we've talked to our constituency. The business community up and down the Ave is worried. They're worried about a couple of things. They're worried about, congestion getting worse for motorists. Yeah. They're worried about deliveries, practical things that businesses think about. And a lot of them have been very vocal. We've been to these meetings. Seth Daniel on our team has covered this project very, very closely. There's clearly some strong reservations, but there are people who are passionate for it. Mm-hmm. And I want to make that clear. I think our coverage this week is pretty balanced in that score. The meeting yesterday, there were people who stood up and said, we want this. We've been long suffering. And we think it's just time to kind of bite the bullet and do it. That's the mayor's position. That's Russell Holmes' position.
So the antis, what are they proposing instead?
They kind of want everything but the center bus lane. They want new crosswalks. They want new sidewalks. They want enhanced, different forms of parking along the route. And they don't want the center bus lane. So that's what they tell people.
Explain this to me. So right now it's a concrete median. Mm-hmm. The center bus lane would tear out the concrete median and put a bus lane instead.
Right.
In both directions.
Both directions.
So it's going to be wider than the current median.
Yeah, probably in some points, although that median's pretty damn wide.
It is pretty wide.
So,
is it taking out a lane of traffic?
There would be some lane reductions in certain places and dedicated turn lanes that don't exist now necessarily that would be installed. So there would be sections. And one of the flashpoints is up around actually Talbot. by Franklin Field,
Yep.
where there are, it's not the whole contiguous route is not uniform in its width, right?
Okay.
So there are sections that are, you would lose a lane potentially, and people there are very against it. One of the things, and Blue Hill Avenue is much like East Broadway and Southie sometimes with the double parking, or sometimes triple parking.
Yeah.
So everybody has an awareness of that, and they're like, well, how's that going to work? I think the hurdle people have is like the behavior that we use now, driving or walking or using Blue Hill Ave at all, may not be the same behaviors a year from now, or 2 years from now, if this project happens. And people haven't been able to get over that.
That's where I get very frustrated, though. I mean, maybe this project isn't perfect, and like, let's add our voices to what can be fixed. But what's there now is not good at all.
Right. And Ayanna Presley said that from jump, right? She said, this is an equity issue. For too long, this has been a deferred project because, frankly, the political will hasn't been there. The political will is there on the mayor's behalf. It was interesting yesterday. Josh Kraft was in the room at this hearing and was clearly is using this to say, this is an example of a project that he sees as unpopular, and that the mayor's not listening to that feedback. She's pushing it ahead.
Yeah.
I think fans of the mayor would say, well, that's what
you don't just do what's popular, right?
Right. For too long, parts of the city have been sort of left behind because consensus can be hard to get to, and unless there's a leader who really, puts that neighborhood in there as a priority.
Right.
That's what's happening at White Stadium. That's what's happening on Blue Hill Ave. You're going to get darts and arrows for that sometimes, but you'll also get laurels when you do it well.
Well, and going back to the equity point, the neighborhoods that don't get things pushed forward for them are usually the ones that don't have voices, that are maybe majority immigrant or majority low income or different constituencies that aren't in a position to fight for those things. So then the louder voices prevail.
Historically, that's been true in this city.
Right.
And I think the frustration, and maybe there's a bit of a learning curve here for everybody, is that when there is a large sum of money on the table for a project, Russell Holmes made this point to me the other day. It's one of the reasons he got into office. He couldn't believe that money got left on the table back in the Patrick administration, and he felt that this project should have been done 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm fed up. Let's move this ahead. But he yesterday at this meeting had to acknowledge, his constituents are kind of inflamed about the idea of the center bus lane. So I don't know how this is going to end up. The other element here that we mentioned, the funding piece, is far from resolved, and that's a big piece of this. This may take much longer than anybody anticipated 2 years ago to get done.
Yeah, I'm sure. The other thing is, we continue to have more traffic, more congestion. We all know that adding lanes has been proven in traffic study over traffic study that when you add lanes of traffic, you get more cars, and then it accelerates the traffic even more. We need to figure out how to stop Boston from being so reliant on cars. We just have to. Getting from here to Hyde Park through Blue Hill Avenue can take 20 minutes. It can take 7 minutes. Depends on when you go. So we've got to start making better, smarter, more progressive decisions about traffic in general. And that may mean that we have a terrible project that takes years of construction and inconveniences people, but makes us shift the way that we live in the city. Yep. And it will inconvenience me too.
It sounds like you should have been testifying at this hearing yesterday. I guess this is your testimony, and it should get on the record, DotLife Pod. The Reporter, we actually did pretty much endorse this project a year ago for the same basic reasons, and also for the equity issue. That, it's time for something to happen on Blue Hill.
Yeah.
But
I would like to see the details of it and see what the exact opposition is to the different elements. But I think in general, the knee-jerk, we don't want to do that because it's going to be disruptive, is problematic. Let's try to be creative and solve problems.
The other thing that happened, it's been a busy week at City Hall, and the other big thing is the mayor signed the city's budget for the next fiscal year, $4.8 billion budget, which is it's about 1%, roughly 1% bigger than last year. I'm sorry, I think it's actually more like a 4% increase. 4% increase.
So last
over
year was
last
an 8% increase, wasn't it?
Right. It was 8% last year. It's 4%. Correct. So it's a more conservative budget than last time. There were some cuts made by the city council, but not as many as last year. They attempted to do more last year in terms of cuts, and the
It was
mayor
vetoed,
overrode those vetoes. So I think this time around, the council said, let's just work it out ahead of time as best we can, and I think that's what happened. There were 2 councilors who voted against the budget last week. Julia Mejia is one of them, and Erin Murphy, both at-large city councilors. And
did they say what their opposition was?
There was a couple of, I don't know exactly what their specific reason was, but it had to do with specific projects that they wanted in that weren't in. I think I'd leave it to them to explain their rationale for voting against it. But, clearly the mayor's attitude was this is a more austere budget than last year. There's the library saw a cut, for instance, of I think it was about $500,000 cut to the BPL. So there's places that got departments that got cut and others that got basically level funded. But clearly this is an attempt by Mayor Wu to signal fiscal discipline in a time where the big threat is the federal cuts that everybody can see coming. We talked about the potential cuts to public housing and Section 8 vouchers, et cetera. That's just one bucket of federal cuts that could be coming this year and the year after that. This is an administration that's certainly ratcheting up its hostility rather than dialing it down. So we also saw that this week with the mayor's executive order, which
actually, can I just ask you one question on the budget?
Yeah, sure.
You talked about the cuts to, for example, the library. Is there any indication yet if that means programs being cut or if it's more like projects that have been greenlit being put on hold, or is this going to turn into like layoffs? Like, do we have any idea where those cuts are going to come yet?
We haven't heard any talk of layoffs, so I want to be clear about that. I think this is more about programs that may have been on the table that may get scaled back. We should probably talk to David Leonard at the BPL a little bit more, find out what they're thinking about how that specifically might hamper things they had planned. But there's been no talk here of cuts, but of course there's basically a hiring freeze now in the city. So new hires aren't going to be happening. Clearly that was telegraphed more than a month ago by the mayor and city councilor Brian Worrell, who's the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, who also spoke about this week. So the budget's done. That's good news.
That is good.
And it got done in fairly short order. The mayor would also say, and did say this week, it's still a signal of a strong economy. Boston's still doing well. The fact that they could increase the budget, it's not a huge one, but is a signal that the business is still going on in Boston. The critique that development has ground to a halt is clearly not the case. It's slowed, but there's a lot of reasons for that.
Let's move to another story about kind of tying into what's happening nationally. We've got some upheaval and some, I don't even know how to describe it. We got some things happening in LA. And your paper, I think you actually wrote an editorial this week about Boston's, what Boston should be taking from what's happening and how we should be reacting to what's going on at that level. Do you want to speak through kind of your advice?
Well, yeah, sure. First, let me start by saying the mayor had a press conference yesterday where she announced a new executive order, which is an attempt by the city to sort of counter what's going on with the ICE raids that clearly are happening at a higher clip, not only in Boston but throughout the Commonwealth and across the country. There's talk of a quota of 3,000 detentions and deportations a week. A day, sorry. Wow. What Mayor Wu and other city leaders have said is like their frustration really is not knowing whether that's real, who's being rounded up, who's being deported, and for what reason. So her executive order tries to address that by requiring the city to FOIA Homeland Security for real-time information on these arrests or deportations.
Meaning that once ICE detains someone, the city has to request information about what?
It instructs city departments to use FOIA rather than just picking up the phone from, Michael Cox at the BPD saying, hey, what's going on over there?
So it just make it more official?
I think it formalizes it. And again, it doesn't mean that there's any drastic teeth to this executive order. It's just saying, look, we're going to make these requests. You're obliged to reply to them. Whether or not Homeland Security replies to them in a timely way or with accurate information, of course, we can't know. But the city needs, it's Mayor Wu's attempt, I think, to try to formalize their response, which it's been a bit disjointed just across the country. And how do local authorities deal with this? What's happening in California, obviously, is the shining example, of different jurisdictions not knowing how to respond when and that, in my view, is a deliberate tactic by Trump and the federal government to sow chaos, sow disorder, provoke, and hope that people overreact to things.
Sow disinformation. That's been a huge campaign.
For sure. And to threaten the arrest of elected officials, which is something that it has to be on Mayor Wu's mind and others. The governor even. Governor Newsom in California has been threatened with arrest and has invited it at this point himself.
As has Karen Bass, the mayor of LA.
Yes. And I think the consensus is at some point soon this is also coming our way. So my editorial this week is more about from the state perspective, from the governor and other governors within our region. We have to start thinking about what that looks like. If Trump were to federalize the National Guard here in Massachusetts, what does that mean? What levers does Governor Healy have to, whether it's to try to prevent it, counter it, legal means obviously, but also what does it mean for our economy? How does New England's governors, for example, perhaps collaborate here to figure out, let's be prepared to deal with interruptions to the energy grid, supply chains, things that are within somewhat of our control. But typically, there's never been recently cause for us to, triage that or to come up with a regional plan.
Do you know if there is one?
I don't believe there is. I mean, there's clearly, mechanisms for them to do it. And the governors meet, and Governor Healy did sign a letter from essentially blue state governors this past week objecting strongly to what Trump is doing in California. But what this might mean in terms of collaborating to secure resources, to energy, to have a unified strategy when it comes to countering things like Homeland Security, ICE, but also National Guard and Marines now being part of the equation.
Does the National Guard, they at least directly are directed by the governor of the state, right? And then that is bypassed by the president if he wants?
If the governor, typically the governor would request federal assistance, and then in certain instances that's happened where it's essentially been federalized by request. My understanding is the only time it's been triggered where the president sort of superseded that authority was in 1965 by Lyndon Johnson, and I think that was in the instance of rioting that was going on, I think in Los Angeles too at that point. But yes, there are mechanisms for Trump to take authority. It's obviously subject to legal pushback, and that's what we're seeing from California. I think Massachusetts really needs to get ahead of this because clearly we're going to be a target.
We're already a target.
Yes, already a target. We're seeing what he's doing with Harvard and singling out institutions that are not only sentimental importance to us. It's a huge driver of our economy and stripping grants and stripping students out of their spots at Harvard. That's money out of our economy. I don't mean to make this just pecuniary in nature here, but this to me is what's part of what's happening is a punishment. This is seeking to penalize our region, our state in particular, and our city, and to make us hurt. So the mayor's move, I think, this week is a wise one, but it's just a drop in the bucket to what needs to be done. It's
also largely symbolic, I think. I mean, there's maybe something there, but it's more of a posturing, and I actually do wonder if it's a little bit of a goading.
Well, look, we are in election season, and the mayor has an opponent, but the real opponent the mayor has at the moment is Washington, D.C. and the Trump administration. That dynamic on the electoral side is a real thing, and I think it really diminishes her actual opponents on the ballot. It hurts their campaigns, to be candid about it, including Josh Kraft, when you have a president and a federal apparatus, aggressively coming at our mayor.
Right.
We saw that happen when she spoke in Congress. And I'm not saying it's calculated on her part. She has to respond to these things.
Right.
So if the opposition party or Josh Kraft or others want to be annoyed about that, they should be annoyed with Washington.
Yeah.
This would be a very different race, by the way. The mayoral race would be very different if Donald Trump wasn't elected last November. If this was a Kamala Harris administration and none of this was going on, we'd be talking about a whole different mayoral race, in my view.
Yeah, agreed. Do you want to wrap up with something a little bit nicer?
Okay.
Can we?
Yes, please.
Is there anything nicer? There is.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, there was news in your reporter about a new leadership position at the BPD.
Yeah, well, they have often promotion ceremonies. There was one last Friday at the Kroc Center in Upham's Corner in Dorchester. And we had, I think it was 8 new sergeants appointed. And one of them was a historic appointment of the first ever Haitian American woman to become a superior officer within the BPD. Her name is Caroline Desir. She's 35 years old and is a native of, grew up in Rosendale and has been through the police ranks obviously the last decade. But this is the first time a Haitian woman has been elevated in that rank.
And she was the youngest on the stage.
She's very much the youngest on the stage.
Yeah.
And it's a very proud moment, not only for her family, but for the Haitian community in Boston, which at the moment is, like a lot of us, feeling a little bit untethered by what's going on nationally, internationally in the case of Haitian Americans.
Particularly for them, yeah.
And it's a proud moment. There was the lead photo in the reporter this week is a picture of Caroline Desir and another one of her newly made sergeants in the police force, who's also a Haitian American man, and the big Haitian flag behind them,
Nice.
which was not part of the official ceremony, by the way. That was people.
Did you Photoshop that in? Is that an AI picture?
That's a Seth Daniel photo who
Okay.
did some terrific photo work this week of that ceremony and other things, but I thought it was really cool. We put it on the front page for a reason, obviously.
Yeah.
And, there were other people promoted in that ceremony who were just as deserving, I'm sure. But, it's significant. And it speaks to the changing culture of the Boston Police Department.
Yeah.
She spoke about that in her interview with Seth. Caroline Desir, now Sergeant Desir, talked about how the police department, for her growing up, she knew cops in her neighborhood, community service officers, and people who were like her, who she could relate to, and it helped in her generation for her to even think about becoming a police officer, and she did, obviously. And more Cape Verdean, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Haitian, Vietnamese sons and daughters of immigrants are on our police force now. It's very clear. BPD has been intentional and effective.
Well, we've got the lowest crime rate of a large city in the country, and there's some correlation there potentially.
I think that is true. I think one of the things, and this is one of these making the needle move, slowly over many, many years. This is a part of that story, and specifically about Haitians. This is also a week where Haitians have now been banned from traveling to the United States, and in that moment, this belongs on page 1 of the reporter. Yeah.
Anything good coming up?
Graduations. We have a ton of graduation photos and names and valedictorians and salutatorians who are been waiting. We've been waiting for the right moment to assemble it all and put it in the paper. That's coming next week.
Okay.
Lots of cool stories about. Again, usually we're talking about, especially at the BPS level, sons and daughters of immigrants or new Bostonians themselves who have excelled in our schools, public, private, and charter, and Catholic. So we'll have a ton of graduation coverage
and
coming
Father's
up.
Day is coming up.
Yes, it is coming up.
Happy Father's Day soon.
Appreciate that. And
then Juneteenth. We got a packed week coming up, actually.
Yep, Juneteenth events in Dorchester. There's on Juneteenth itself, the 19th in Town Field. There's also a Strand Theater event coming up that's it sounds really cool. I think it's the Howard University Choir is coming.
Oh, neat.
And that's going to be like the official City of Boston Juneteenth celebration at the Strand.
Howard University in D.C., the HBCU?
Yeah,
Oh, that's,
the
that's
HBCU
cool.
choir, I think it's the men's choir is coming
that'll
to
be
Boston,
cool.
so that should be very cool.
Check that out, yeah. Awesome. Well, have a great week. Enjoy
Thank
the weather
you.
while it's not raining because it's not a weekend.
And thanks for coming through.
Yeah, thanks for
Good to
having
have
us.
you back.
See you next week.
Okay.
DotLife is sponsored in part by the Dorchester Reporter, Dorchester's own community newspaper and online home for all things Dorchester at dotnews.com. The Reporter, owned and operated by the Forry family, has been laser focused on Dorchester and the surrounding neighborhoods of Boston since 1983. That longevity and experience shows in its award-winning coverage every week. The Reporter is our go-to source for authentic stories about the people, places, and events that matter most to our daily lives. We are proud to partner with The Reporter and Dot News. And you can support the important journalism provided by The Reporter. Just go to dotnews.com to subscribe today. It's the best deal in town and helps keep our local community journalism alive and well. DotLife. We are here on location today at BostonX in Adams Village at the Med Spa, which is owned by Nicole Flaherty. Nicole, thanks so much for hosting us today.
Thank you so much for allowing us to have you here.
Absolutely. And we're also joined by Carrie Doherty, who is the nurse manager here.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you for coming, Carrie.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about the med spa and the cosmetic industry in general, but before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourselves. You're both Dorchester residents, and about the business and how this came to be. So Nicole, I'll start with you.
Yeah, great. So I am a nurse practitioner. I worked in the hospital at Beth Israel downtown for almost 20 years. And I was doing Botox on the side, just kind of like private parties, that sort of thing, getting a lot of really great feedback, and then going into the hospital, and that's definitely a hard place to be at times, especially because I was in the ICU. And I thought maybe I want to kind of pivot a little bit. I turned 40, and I was like, let's do something a little bit different and do something I really enjoy.
I think when you turn 40, if you aren't thinking that way, you're doing it wrong. Like, it's time to be happy.
Yes, exactly. I put the time in, and
yeah,
so it was a little bit of a change, actually a huge change, but really, really excited that I did it and really enjoying doing this for the people in our community.
I can't imagine the shift in hours must be completely different.
Absolutely. So as a nurse practitioner, we are considered providers in the hospital, and I was doing 24-hour shifts, and now I'm doing whatever works for me and my family. So
that.
It's amazing.
Good for you. That's awesome. And Carrie, how about you?
I worked at a med spa on the other side of Boston and in Somerville for a few years. It was a bigger company, so I always wanted to work with like a small business type vibe. And then we met through mutuals. My neighbor and her husband were friends growing up, and so we made a connection and had some lunch at Lucy's, and now we're here.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
And you are officially OFD.
I am OFD, yes.
Very nice. And Nicole, you're just...
Husband is OFD, so obviously I had no choice.
So you're not even DBC. You're Dorchester not by choice. But
No, definitely by choice. This is the best place to raise a family.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So you found this space. It was empty when you found it.
Yep.
And we're right next to Blasi's, for those who are kind of familiar with the area. And Blasi's had a fire a few years back, and this space was part of that fire.
That's correct, yeah.
So how much did go into the reno?
Yeah, so this place was down to the studs, but I mean, so that's kind of a big undertaking, but I looked at it like, we're going to make this exactly what I want it to be in every way. So we hired an amazing contractor, PJ Kelly. I would recommend him to anyone. And I got an amazing interior designer, Justine Spalding Spitz. And we took this place on. It took about 5 months, and we opened May of last year.
So you're at just over a year. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
thank
wonderful.
You so much.
So I want to pivot a little and talk about the industry in general. So there's a lot of folks who do have cosmetic procedures, or is cosmetic procedures the right term?
I think it's kind of an umbrella of what we offer, yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't, or don't know much about it. So let's talk about what it is, what it isn't, what types of services you offer here, and kind of where people should be thinking about what might work for them.
Yeah, so we offer neurotoxins, which everybody calls Botox. It's like calling it Band-Aid. It has the brand name, and that helps with some anti-aging effects. It can help like reduce wrinkles in the upper face mainly. We also do fillers, which is a hyaluronic acid that you inject into the most common place is the lips. Some people will do it in their cheeks, their chin, anywhere where volume loss is noticed. We also do medical weight loss. We carry semaglutide, which is all through Nicole because she is a nurse practitioner. And then we do IV hydration. A lot of people think that it's just for hangovers. We get
It's not.
No, most of our clients that come in for IV hydration come in for like health maintenance. They come in every couple of weeks for an IV. Some people will come in before a race. We had over 40 people come in before the marathon. And then some people come in for our immune mix if they're sick. It's all different. And we also do consultations. So many people come in and say, I don't know what I need. I know I want something. And then we'll talk to them for 15, 20 minutes and kind of make a plan together.
And consultations are always complimentary.
What are the trends right now? You've talked a little bit about kind of the procedures, but what are things, I know that like minimally invasive is definitely kind of trending. I think that's always trending, right? Like nobody wants invasive. But also like more natural looking results are really in.
Absolutely. Yeah. We like to say at BostonX, we like inject the undetectable injectable, because we hear all the time during our consultations, I don't want to look different.
Yeah.
And that's the main goal. We're just going to make you look like you slept well last night, basically. Look like yourself possibly 5 to 10 years ago. So.
What are some misperceptions that you think people have about Botox or fillers, and how would you debunk those?
Yeah.
Probably that you're going to look plastic.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really hard to do that much in like one appointment and make you look completely different. People also clump Botox and filler together.
Yeah.
So
I think it's the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people think that when you do Botox, you're then going to have these huge lips, and they're not even related at all.
Yeah.
And people mention saying, I don't want to look like that actress that overdid it and can't reverse it now.
Yeah.
But we really go for the natural look. I have filler everywhere and I have Botox everywhere, and so many people tell me they had no idea, and that's my goal.
Right.
My favorite is when somebody says that their partner didn't even notice. So it's like, it's more for you.
Yeah.
I got like a little bit of my lips done, and my dad was like, I don't mean to offend you, but I can't tell. And I was like, that's amazing, because I can tell.
Yeah.
It helps with my confidence. I look in the mirror and I feel better, but people around me aren't noticing that huge change.
Yeah, for sure.
So fillers and Botox, I believe both are short term, right? They're not a permanent change. Fillers dissolve over time. Is that right?
That's correct. Your body naturally metabolizes them over time.
Okay.
Or rarely, if like fillers go to a place that they shouldn't, if injected improperly, we're able to dissolve them with a medication. Yeah.
And Botox has a time.
Yeah, it's usually about 3 to 4 months at less. Yeah.
So even if someone were to hypothetically do this and hate it, it's not like you're stuck with it forever.
Exactly. I actually love to inject first-time Botox users because I'm like, it's not forever. But you're going to love it, and I'll see you back in 3 to 4 months. And we always go super slow and light for those particular clients, and we have them come back at 2 weeks so they usually need more, but just so they're not like diving in deep.
Yeah.
We go nice and slow.
And what about the health risks? Are there health risks associated with, it's called toxin, so.
Yeah. That's a really good question.
It's definitely, people have like a negative connotation with that word for sure. There isn't too many like long-term health effects. It's all about who is injecting it, making sure that you have an actual medical provider, not just an esthetician, and getting the right product for you. People could maybe get a little bit of like the eyelid going up like this. That just requires a couple more units here and there. But as long as you're being transparent about your medical history and we are like licensed, like I said earlier, it really isn't that dangerous.
Botox is also used for migraines, right?
No.
Or other non-cosmetic purposes.
That's correct. Yeah, we do a couple of those services here. Typically for migraines, I ask them to go to their provider because insurance will cover it, and it's a lot of units. And so we would rather them get the service for free to treat their migraine. But other places that we inject that are considered like medical procedure are the masseters. For TMJ, for clenching, that sort of thing. We do that quite often. There is a cosmetic benefit to it as well. It does like slim the face. So we have people come in for that reason, and then also for the clenching and kind of relieving the stress in the jaw.
What does it does it relax the muscles or tighten the muscles?
So it relaxes the muscles, and then over time, the muscles aren't being used as much in clenching. And so if you think when you like lift something, you're building muscle, so there is atrophy to the muscle of the jaw.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then we also do Botox under the arm for people who have hyperhidrosis, which is excessive sweating. So people who find themselves like not able to wear white shirts, it's perfect for them. And it actually lasts a little bit longer than the face does, about like 6 to 9 months.
Oh, I had no idea that was a use case. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Talk a little bit more about the IVs, because that is
game changer.
So you mentioned, it's a performance, potentially like athletic performance solution. Also, there are medical IVs, obviously.
Yep.
Do you do medical IVs here?
For sure. Okay. So people who suffer from migraines, we get several of those clients as well, because if you were to go to the emergency room, you would get the exact same thing that we offer. Because I'm a nurse practitioner, because we are healthcare providers, I'm able to give medications such as Toradol, which is a high-test ibuprofen, so it helps with migraines. People who are pregnant, like in their early pregnancies, we give them IV fluids. We give Zofran, which is an anti-nausea medication. So it's really helping a wide variety of people for many different reasons, not just the hungover person on Saturday morning, which we do get, and we love them. We've all been there. So,
yeah. It's funny. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he said he had had some sort of episode and had to go to the emergency room, and they did admit him, or they were going to admit him. They gave him a full bag, and they said, we can't give you another one for 12 hours, so we're going to admit you, and that would have cost a fortune. Yeah. So he ended up leaving and then going to a place like this and got the bag the next day, and it was fine. Yeah. For thousands of dollars less.
Yep, exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Such a weird healthcare situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, different podcast topic.
Definitely. So I'll tune into that one for sure.
What do other people get IVs for? So it's hydration is one of them, right? Is there any what do you put in the IV? Is it electrolytes?
Yeah, for sure. So you can get a plain bag of just normal saline without anything added. You can get vitamin complex, vitamin C, a mineral blend. We do calcium in there, magnesium, which is really great, especially for the migraines and pain. Women who are on their period or menstrual cycle that get really heavy ones, it does help with that. Okay. Like I said, early pregnancy, the women with like hyperemesis gravidum, which is just throwing up constantly, can't even get out of bed. We have some of those women in here 2 times a week, just helping them get through. And then actually last month, one of them came back to show us her baby, and we're like, we helped with that.
We grew you.
Exactly. And then we had Pan Mass Challenge. Bikers come in before their big race. Yeah. Like Carrie mentioned, we have about 45 Boston Marathon runners come in. So and then we have our regulars who come in once a week or once every 2 weeks just for hydration, just like as part of their wellness plan.
And what about the facial? What is it called? A hydrating facial? Is that what you offer?
Hydrofacial, yeah.
Hydrofacial basically deep cleans the skin. It exfoliates. It gets rid of all of the dead skin cells on the top layer of your skin, and it also helps reduce congestion. And that way, whenever you are doing your skincare or putting products on, it's able to penetrate deeper, and you're actually getting more out of it. And then at the end, there is a final hydrating portion where you just push all of the antioxidant hydration into the skin. Nothing is there to block it from getting to those deeper layers. And a lot of the times we'll have patients, they'll do the Beauty Mix IV, which has biotin and vitamin C in it, while getting the hydrofacial. So they're getting hydrated inside and outside.
Do you have a lot of guys come in?
We have some guys, yeah.
And
I mean, definitely more women, but we do have guys, especially that like their Botox.
Okay.
There's that like, people call it Brotox. But I mean, yeah.
There doesn't even need to be a different name for it.
Yeah.
Really and truly. And you know what? Guys like to look good too. And my husband never had Botox, and I was like, "You are looking like you need some." So I was like, "Great,
This will be nice thing for you to say.
This will be great content." So, and now he's like, "I'm never going back," because it really doesn't change the way you look. It just smooths the lines and wrinkles.
What's the difference? You're a med spa. What's the difference between a med spa and like a day spa or a non-med spa? Is there any kind of licensure difference, or is it just the services you offer, or is it your qualifications? Like, what makes it different?
Yeah, I definitely can see how there can be confusion because there is some crossover for sure. Because we do offer facials, you don't need to be a medical provider to perform those. However, any of the other services that we offer, you know, the weight loss, the Botox, the fillers, the IVs, you do need to be a medical provider. In order to own a med spa in Massachusetts, you need to be a nurse practitioner or a physician.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there definitely is confusion. I would definitely encourage the listeners to make sure that they're receiving medical services from a medical licensed person.
Yeah.
Is it possible not to? Should you be checking at the spa?
I think you should be interviewing your provider.
Really? Okay.
I mean, we're asking you questions about your health history before we provide any service. I don't think it's unreasonable for you to ask your provider where they went to school, what certification they have, just because of the recent news story that came out. You know, if any of our patients want to see what we're injecting into them, want to look at the bottle, if anyone wants to know where I went to school or look at our licenses,
like
100%. Your 20-year history of
like, of course, you know, you should feel comfortable where you're going, and what products people are giving you.
Yeah.
And it is nice when your patient does ask you these questions because you know that they care. They're putting in a lot of thought into this.
You don't take it as a challenge. You take
not
it
in
as
the slightest.
No, not at all. I think most of Botox takes about like 2 to 5 minutes to inject. It's very, very quick, but we have 25-minute appointments, and that's because we're being thorough with our patients. We're asking them their health history, and then most of the time I'm just providing education about what the product does, what you should expect, and the aftercare.
Yeah.
That's what most of the appointment takes. The actual injections, 2 minutes tops.
Yeah. Is it painful?
No.
Are you sure?
Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
So, filler is a little more sore.
Yeah.
Because the needle's in a little longer and there's a bit of pressure.
I would say anything around the lips is spicy.
I can imagine.
We use the word spicy because that sounds better than
it's
painful.
Gonna hurt.
But like the forehead, no, those are like little pin pricks, and with filler we numb the area too, so it's a little less spicy. But you can get Botox in the lip. It's called a lip flip, and it's quick, but it's spicy.
Is it long-term pain or just in the moment?
Just in the moment.
No,
Okay.
it stings for about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it makes your eyes water.
Yeah.
Because
Or
we have
sneeze.
so many nerve endings on our
Yeah.
lips.
Yeah.
And everything is like connected up here. So it makes your eyes water and then you're over it.
I'm not gonna lie though, women have a very high pain tolerance, like
100%.
much higher than men.
100%.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think we can handle it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the weight loss services that you're offering. That is clearly a trend. It
Humongous.
has burst onto the scene in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
What do you know about semaglutide, and do you recommend? Obviously, you recommend that you offer it. So why do you recommend it, and to whom, and who should be thinking about it?
Yeah. So I think there's a recent study that about 33% of the population will be on it within the next few years. Yeah. So
Wow.
I don't think it's going anywhere. I think the more that we learn about it, we're just learning so many more benefits as we go on. Like when we first opened a year ago, there was a recent study that it decreases like the risk of Alzheimer's. Anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot of patients that were on anxiety and depression meds that are coming off of it now. Just to show
There is some crossover, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
There's
like
like a-
Wellbutrin is part of that whole suite of
Yeah, it's amazing. And so it's just showing that like before we had this theory that there was like a gut-brain connection, and it's kind of proving that that's the point.
Yeah.
They're showing that like shopping addiction is decreasing while being on the med. People who tend to like to partake in alcoholic beverages are drinking less. So so there's a lot of really cool benefits besides the amazing, losing weight, decreasing cardiovascular risk, that sort of thing.
And this is an injectable.
This is an injectable.
Is it a regular series, or like how often do they?
Once a week.
Once a week, okay.
Once a week, yeah.
And for how long? Until you hit the weight you want?
Yeah, so we have a wide variety of patients that we see. We have patients that want to lose 200 pounds, and we have patients that want to lose 10 pounds.
Okay.
So I'm in control. I prescribe the medication. So if someone is coming in for their wedding and only wants to lose 10 pounds, all right, well, we won't take it further than that.
Yeah.
Or if someone needs to be on it more long term, then they're able to.
So I thought, at least when it first came out, I thought you were only eligible if you had to lose like more than 50 pounds or something, right? Has that changed?
Probably not with your primary care doctor. So we don't go through insurance. So so we don't take insurance at all at the medical spa. So if you wanted to get it through your physician, typically you have to be a certain BMI and have certain comorbidities in order for your insurance to cover it. That's the nice thing about the med spa, because we don't have to go through insurance. So we kind of have our own path.
And where is this semaglutide suite? Beck, I'll be right back. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm like, did I miss something? Yep, it's an amazing drug, and it's working for a lot of people. I mean, people do best when they do it with eating right and exercising.
Yeah, and the maintenance too, right? Because once you come off it, you could gain the weight back if you're not.
You could gain the weight back. We do drop the dosage, so people can go on maintenance for a few months after they've reached their goal, and studies show that helps reduce the risk of rebounding.
Okay. What's the risk?
It's completely contraindicated if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Okay. It's completely contraindicated if you have a family history of thyroid cancer.
Okay.
And if you have a history of pancreatitis.
Does it increase those risks if you don't, or is it just not compatible?
Yeah, so one of the studies on rodents did not increase the risk of thyroid cancer. However, that has not been proven on humans. So, but we just don't even take the risk. If you have a family history, we don't prescribe.
Okay, got it. Talk about costs. These procedures are not inexpensive. So what would you have people think about if they're thinking about getting some of these procedures? How much should they be? What number should they have in their head, or what range? And is that like a monthly cost? Like, just give people a sense of, if you've not done this before but you're curious, what am I getting into?
Yeah. So semaglutide, I mean, we're pretty competitive.
Okay.
I've negotiated with our pharmacy a few times because I see the great things it's doing for people, and I want them to continue, and I want them to get to their goals. So we offer semaglutide anywhere from $400 to $450 a month, which is pretty good. My favorite thing about like Botox and fillers is when the husbands come in for the gift cards for like Mother's Day, and they're like, I'd like to get my wife some Botox. And I'm like, that's great. Has she been here? And we look up her profile and see how much she gets. Mm-hmm. And then we say that, and they nearly fall over every time.
Yeah, their head always swings back.
I'll just get $100 gift card.
Yeah. Okay, that'll do like half of one side of her face.
Like just an eye.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's important to take away from this is you can get Groupons, right? Yeah. And you can get discounts, but it's kind of like you get what you spend.
Yeah.
Right? So I think our pricing is pretty competitive. Botox goes by unit. It's different for every person because it's based on muscle strength.
Okay.
So if you have a really strong forehead, typically our men clients need a lot more Botox than our women clients.
Okay.
Women who are more mature need a lot more Botox than our 20-year-olds. So it's not like a cookie cutter thing. But I think that for Botox, you can typically expect to spend $300 to $700 for a face.
Yeah. And if you start it younger, do you tend to not need as much as you get older, or does it not really matter?
Per appointment, every like 3 to 4 months, if you were to come in and you've never gotten it before and you are later in life, they are going to require a lot more than somebody that had been getting it frequently and staying on top of it at that same age.
If you think of a piece of paper and you fold it and you have a crease, right, and you keep kind of creasing it, it's going to make that line deeper. But if you are frozen, like I'm pretty frozen right now, I was injected last week, like my crease isn't there anymore, so it's going to kind of not get deeper, if that makes sense.
Right. What can people expect from the experience when they come in? Let's say they want to get an IV.
Yeah.
Is it very medical? Is it very spa? Is it in between?
I think in between, yeah.
Yeah.
I think someone walks in, we still take their medical history, we take their blood pressure to make sure that's in a good range. We sign consents, HIPAA, this, we know everyone in this neighborhood, and this is actually a really important point, and I say it to everyone. She's in a certain generation, I'm in a certain generation. Together, we pretty much know everyone who walks in here. And so privacy is important. It's the law. Yeah. So we make sure to mention that, especially with our weight loss clients, because that can be sensitive for sure. So we sign consents, and then we ask them kind of what's going on today, what brings you in. Oh, I'm hungover, or oh, I'm 4 weeks pregnant and can't keep anything down. And then we advise them on what mix we would suggest for their ailments. And then we hook them up, put an IV in, and then they can watch Netflix in a lounge chair. So I think that's like where the spa comes in.
Yeah. They're really comfy looking chairs.
They're so comfortable. For sure. And they can bring their friends too, so that kind of looks like a spa as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We want people to know that we take this all very seriously.
Yeah.
But we also want you to feel comfortable with just a few local girls.
Yeah.
Have a nice experience.
Relaxation day.
It's not a medical appointment. It's not a doctor's visit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Last question about this. What is one thing you would tell people who are maybe thinking about it or have some reserves? Any advice?
Yeah. Come in for a consultation. We can answer your questions. We can be thorough. We can go as slow as you want. You don't have to have like the whole gamut of services in one visit. We can do things slowly, and I encourage that.
And if someone wants to come in for a consultation, you won't pressure them to do something that day, right? Like they don't need to feel like if I consult and take their time, I better get an injection.
No,
okay.
I think it's better, especially for filler. I think filler is a commitment. I think it's better that you leave the consultation and then schedule something later.
Okay.
After Botox consultations, we generally do inject.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think, come in and see what we have to offer.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Last question. Where is your favorite place to eat in Dorchester?
Oh. I like Molinari's.
Okay.
Well, yeah. It's just right there, across the street. They have gluten-free options for me. Mm-hmm. I like it there.
Can I have a few answers?
Sure.
So I have 3 kids. I think like a great family establishment is Blassie's right next door.
Okay.
Very family friendly.
Big. Lots of space.
Lots of space. I mean, when my kids were really little, they could run around and like no one would care. If we're going out for like a bite after work, I'd say McGonagall's.
Okay.
Yeah.
New,
a
right?
bite and a pint.
Yeah. A bite and a pint, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate, again, you letting us invade your space for a few hours. And hopefully people will get something out of this and can ask you questions if they want to come in and avail themselves of your services.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. DotLife is supported by the record company, Boston's leading provider of accessible music creation spaces. The record company is addressing the critical shortage of affordable creative space in our city, serving over 4,000 monthly users across 131 communities. They've preserved 47,000 square feet of professional studio and rehearsal space at rates 60 to 90% below market value, ensuring Boston's musicians have a place to create, regardless of economic means. But they're more than just affordable space. They're building career pathways through partnerships with Bunker Hill Community College, offering professional certification programs that lead to sustainable music careers. This vital work is at risk. As creative spaces continue to disappear across Boston, the record company needs community support to maintain these essential resources. Their Amplify Boston campaign directly funds space preservation and career development programs. Visit therecordcompany.org today. That's therecordco.org to donate, become a monthly supporter, or learn about partnership opportunities. Every contribution helps keep Boston's music ecosystem thriving. The Record Company, creating accessible pathways to music creation since 2010. Welcome back to DotLife. We are here for this week's Tiny Dot concert with one of a cool instrument that I've never seen before that also has a name, and the instrument's traveling companion, Chelsea Spear. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, nice to see you again. How are you today, Erin?
Doing great. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah,
Really
of course.
appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here.
You came in from Malden this morning.
I did come in from Malton this morning.
Awesome.
I took the orange line to the red line, and
Okay.
once I plugged the address into Maps, I actually graduated from UMass Boston.
Oh, perfect. So you knew where you were going.
So I knew where I was going. It was one of those, like, I plugged it in, and I'm like, oh right, I passed that 1,000 times.
How's the train today?
It was okay. I mean, the T,
Yeah.
it's a
Hit or miss.
Hit or miss,
Yeah.
but today it was more hit than miss. So
That's great. Love to hear that.
yeah, definitely.
And the weather's beautiful.
The weather is
So
gorgeous.
it's nice
yes.
to have the sun coming in the windows finally.
Absolutely. Yeah. It feels like we earned it.
It does. It does. It's been a slog.
Yeah.
But so you are here with Brindle,
Yep.
and tell us a little bit about Brindle.
Okay. So this is a banjolele, and it's called that because it has a banjo head, but it's tuned like a ukulele.
Okay.
This one was actually made in Western Massachusetts by a company called Magic Fluke. And they did, about a decade ago, they did a limited edition run. Janet Klein is like an old-timey musicologist, and she has a band called the Parlor Boys out in Los Angeles. And she plays the ukulele, and it's a big deal in the ukulele world. And she's also a cartoonist. She worked on Over the Garden Wall, and about a decade ago, she and one of her collaborators, Tom Foolery, drew this banjo head, where she's drawn as a firefly who's doing the shim sham. And I had gotten my tax return, and I was like, I want a banjolele, and I want that banjolele. and then I got it, and it kind of sat on my floor for a couple of years. I made a record a couple of years ago called Notes from Undergrad, and I'm like, I want banjolele on this. So I got this one, and I got this one out of Camphor. And then I made a record called Number One in Heaven starring Travels with Brindle that I recorded at the Boston Public Library, and I wanted it to have like an old-timey 1920s, 30s sound. Mm-hmm. So I figured, like I played the banjolele on notes. Why don't I, bust her out again for this album? And I think I'm probably like a banjolele girl from here on out.
So banjolele is a portmanteau that is not made up by you. It's an actual
It's an actual instrument. It even says on here the Firefly Flapper banjolele.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
What got you into banjolele?
So I got into ukulele about a decade ago, or over a decade ago at this point. My mom used to have these epic Christmas parties. Someone brought and she would have a Yankee swap, and someone brought a ukulele, like a really cheap plywood ukulele. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was self-employed, and I was really gunning for the Stoppies gift card. And I ended up taking the banjolele home, and I'm looking at it, or the ukulele home.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it going, what am I going to do with this?
Right.
And then a couple years later, I had a year of service with AmeriCorps, and one of my other big hobbies is knitting. I couldn't afford to knit because yarn is expensive, but I figured, you have a ukulele and you're one and done, theoretically. So I started to teach myself to play ukulele. I worked with a ukulele teacher in Somerville named Amy Kucharek, who has a band called Tiger Moan, and who herself is a bit of a musicologist and is a blues player. And I spent a year doing that. At the end of the year, I knew a lot of chord shapes, and I had some cover songs in my pocket, so I got a a busking license from the MBTA. I spent a year playing all 56 T-stops.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one to play?
Oh, I actually, sound-wise, I really like the corridor between Park Street and Downtown Crossing because you
Okay.
have that really nice natural reverb.
Yeah.
It's
It's a terrible place to be.
It's a terrible place. Like, it's smelly.
Yeah.
And it's desolate.
Dirty.
It's
Yeah.
dirty, but it was great to be in there. And like, the ukulele doesn't have a lot of natural reverb, but
Okay.
it was great to like play a note and then you could hear it down the hall,
Yeah.
30 seconds later. So that I really liked that. I also have fond memories of playing in Quincy Center, and there was a woman who was fixing one of the Charlie card vending machines, and she stopped and she gave a $5 bill to one of the commuters, and he left it in my case, and he said, just so you know, that lady over there who's been fixing the vending machines thinks you have a nice voice.
Oh, wow.
And she's standing there and she waved at me and I waved back at her. So I have like very fond memories
That's very
of
sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the two memories that stick out in
Okay.
terms of like my favorite spots to play on the tee.
But then you went from busking. Do you still busk?
Not now. I'm hoping, I've been thinking about like going back in the winter, and I have a lot of Christmas and holiday songs, and I've been more involved with like soloing. So I've been thinking about just whipping that out, between Thanksgiving and December 24th.
Okay.
And just, taking the Orange Line to Downtown Crossing every morning and, assuming, like trying to figure out what I'm going to do for work. But,
Yeah.
go there and then just play in that corridor, in that like awful, desolate, smelly corridor, and just bring some beauty to that and play some Christmas songs.
Oh, that's
But
lovely.
I haven't busked in a while. I think part of it is that I've been so hyper-focused on the album of original music I released a couple of years ago, and now this covers album, and now also the Dorothy Parker album that I've been working on.
Okay.
And I've just been more focused on those, and those are hard things to do if you're busking.
Yeah, I can imagine. When you say you're recording it at BPL, this is the downtown
Yes,
location?
the
And do they
Copley
have their
Square.
own...
They do.
like,
They have
studio space?
They have a maker space in the basement. It's part of the Kirstein. It's the KBLIC, the Kirstein Business or Kirstein Library and Business Information Center.
Okay.
I got the acronym wrong, but it's okay.
That's okay.
And they have like a little maker space where they have a green screen. They have video cameras you can check out. There's a graphic design Mac, and then there are 2 Macs that they use for recording.
That's awesome.
And like there are some very like kind of strict, I guess, like you can only go in for 6 hours a week, 2 hours a day, and so you really have to be on the ball.
Focused. Yeah.
You have to be really focused.
Yeah.
But I was able to. I spent about 4 months down there recording my latest EP, recording the covers album. And I've been down there as frequently as I can be to work on the Dorothy Parker album as well.
And when do you expect that one to drop?
It's a funny thing. My goal was to have all of the ukulele tracked by today, and that hasn't happened.
Was that because today is a milestone day?
It's my birthday. But it was also, I had been recording at the Cambridge Library, which also has a makerspace, and their makerspace is available for much fewer hours. So I moved over to the BPL, and it's easier to get to, but it's also one of those like, it like time gets away from you sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I've been, trying to balance that and a couple of other things. I'm about 60% done with the ukulele. I'm hoping to record the vocals this summer with my friend Joel. And then my initial plan was to release it on what would have been Dorothy Parker's 134th birthday, which is next year. This project that I've been working on has legs. And I'm there's going to be a second version of the live show with this, and my dream is to take it to Edinburgh for the
very
Fringe
cool.
Festival. But it's one of those, I'd like to take this to Ed Fringe, but I would also like a pony. So we'll see which one happens first.
Tell us about what you're going to play for us today.
So I'm playing 2 songs from the covers EP that I did, which is called Number One in Heaven, starring Travels with Brindle. I recorded this 2 years ago. There's a band called Sparks. They're from Los Angeles. They are like they were the subject of an Edgar Wright movie, which is going to be a much easier way for me to describe them than what they sound like. But it's they're this very eclectic. They're these two brothers, these two very eccentric brothers in Los Angeles. They've been around since the late 1960s. They just released their 28th album a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And in 1979, they released one of my favorite albums of all time. It's a covers album. It's their disco album. And I saw them a couple years ago, and I could hear, like, melodically that like if you took away the synthesizers, it sounds like something you'd hear in a 1930s movie musical.
Okay.
And I said, all right, I need to follow that. And so I spent 4 months recording it in the in the bowels of the BPL. So I will be playing Beat the Clock, which has a big solo. I'm playing Number One in Heaven. And I've interpolated an Irving Berlin song called Angels of Mercy, because if you know the original Sparks song, there's a big instrumental part, and I couldn't get that right. But I figured, let me just put this 1940s Irving Berlin song in there. Okay. It works really well. I'm playing one of the songs from the Dorothy Parker album that this is the first time I've played it outside of my bedroom. It's called Indian Summer. I've recorded it. I entered it in a contest with WNYC. We'll see if it gets anywhere. Hopefully they like it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be finishing out with a real crowd pleaser called When You Wish Upon a Star.
I know that one.
Yeah, I figured you did. Like if you've been to the movies in the past 80 years, you've heard it.
Yeah.
I chose that one because Cliff Edwards, who was the voice of Jiminy Cricket, was a ukulele player and a singer in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And he led a life very unlike Jiminy Cricket's. Also, you can look his Wikipedia entry as a ride.
Okay.
And I wanted to pay tribute to him in some way. And Christopher Davis Shannon, who is an online ukulele teacher and another musicologist. I feel like if you play ukulele, you have to, there's a point where you just start collecting songs. But Christopher Davis Shannon did a really lovely arrangement of When You Wish Upon a Star for solo ukulele, and I closed my Dorchfest set out with that, and
perfect.
It went over really well.
Yes.
So yes,
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, you've been at Dorchfest for 4 years now.
Yep.
Hopefully, we'll have you back next year. And I'm excited to hear you play.
Thank you. I'm excited to play for you.
Let's go.
All right. Hello, I'm Chelsea. This is Brindle. Together we're Travels with Brindle. And I'm going to play you some songs from my new album, the Sparks Covers album Number One in Heaven, starring Travels with Brindle. This is called Beat the Clock. I was born a little premature. Mom just couldn't take no more. Had no time to wonder why. Goodbye, mama, gotta fly. Bye, 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 bye. Entered school when I was 2. PhD that afternoon. Never ever entered sports. Didn't look too good in shorts. Got divorced when I was 4. I've seen everything there is. I've done everything there is. I've met everyone but Liz. Now I've even met old Liz. No time for relationship. Skip the foreplay, let her rip. Gotta beat the clock. Gotta beat the clock. Gotta beat the clock. Gotta beat the clock. did lots of traveling, parts of me unraveling. The army then rejected me, said I had 2 left feet, wore them out when I was 3. Too bad there ain't 10 of you. Then I'll show you what I'll do. I could cheat on 5 of you and be faithful to you too, but there's only 1 of you. I've seen everything there is, I've done everything there is, I've met everyone but this. Now I've even met old Liz. No time for relationship. Skip the foreplay, let her rip. Gotta beat the clock. Gotta beat the clock. Gotta beat the clock. Gotta beat the clock. Thank you. So my second song, and I'm just going to take the chord sheets out, it's called The Number One Song in Heaven. It's technically the title track. We'll see if this stays out. If you've ever seen Sparks live, there's a point in the song where there's like a drop, and Ron comes out and he does this kind of shuffling Charleston style dance. I couldn't really do an electronica style drop on the banjolele, so I figured I would insert a little bit of an Irving Berlin song from the 40s called Angels of Mercy. So this is The Number One Song in Heaven. This is the number one song in heaven, written, of course, by the mightiest hand. All of the angels are sheep in the fold of their master. They always follow the master and his plan. This is the number one song in heaven. Are you hearing it now? You ask. Maybe you're closer to here than you imagined. Maybe you're closer to here than you care to be. If you should die before you wake, if you should die while crossing the street, the song that you hear, I guarantee, it's number one all over heaven, the number one song in all of heaven. It's all the rage up here in the clouds. Light as a cloud, soft as a doubt. Lyrically weak, but the music's the thing. It goes la 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 la. Sound filters down, down through the clouds. Reaches the earth and winds around. And it breaks up in millions of ways. Gabriel plays it, God, how he plays it. Gabriel plays it, let's hear him play it. the song I'm about to play is the first semi-original that I've written probably since 2022. Last summer, I made a challenge to myself to write one very short song where I took the lyrics from a Dorothy Parker poem and I put them to music. And I wanted to try to get them to be shorter than 3 minutes. And I've actually started recording that album at the BPL. And it's called, the working title is Mrs. Parker Jams Econo. It's a reference to a band called the Minutemen. And this is the second song. It's called Indian Summer. In youth it was a way I had to do my best to please. In youth it was a way I had to do my best to please. To change with every passing fad to suit his theories. Now I know the way I know and do the things I do. Now I know the way I know and do the things I do. If you do not like me so, to hell my love with you. And for my fourth and final song, so one of my influences for this was a guy named Cliff Edwards, who was a ukulele player and a crooner in the 1930s. He predated Sinatra, and he was kind of this hard-living vaudeville guy who played the ukulele, and I was really drawn to his style. He had this really lovely casual way of singing that I liked a lot, and he had kind of an interesting way of playing the ukulele. I'm using the word interesting too much. You probably don't know him by name, but if you've been to the movies at all in the past 80 years, you've definitely heard the song he created. So this is that. Thank you, DotLife Podcast.
Thank you for listening to DotLife, which is available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. DotLife is produced and edited by me, Erin Caldwell. Technical support is provided by Yasser Mahmood and John Forry. Additional support is provided by the Dorchester Reporter and the Record Company. Thanks to Nicole Flaherty, Carrie Doherty, Bill Forry, and Chelsea Spear as Travels with Brindle for joining this week's show. We'd love if you could share, subscribe, rate, and review the pod wherever you listen. If you are interested in supporting the podcast, visit dotlifepod.com for more information.